Welcome back to another episode of Wrist Check Podcast. The gang is back together again. Geneva Part 2. In less than 3 months. Yeah. Ridiculous. We got a very, very special episode for you all today. We happen to be with a friend of the pod, key member in Biver Watches, Pierre Biver.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Thank you for coming us. We flew all the way over here for you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I hope I will be able to deliver enough so that you'll fly back again.
Exactly. Yes. Anytime.
Yes.
So we got a lot to talk about today. We're going to get into the who, what, why. We're going to get into the product, history, everything. But before we do that, if you've seen the show, and I know you have, we start with our honorary wrist check before we do anything. And as is tradition, we always start with the man who never repeats a watch, who's repeated a couple of times, but we won't hold it against him. That man happens to be sitting on my left. Mr. Smith, what do you got on the wrist today?
So I am wearing a very, very special timepiece, as they all are.
Sure.
I am wearing a 36 millimeter Datejust with the blue Vignette dial gem set, which happens to be my birth year watch. It was a watch that I has been dying to share on the show. Sadly, had to part with a few timepieces in order to acquire this one, but I am absolutely happy with the decision I made.
See everyone's faces lighting up about what you actually had to part with to get that. So there's going to be a lot of questions.
Yes. But this piece here is very special because it is like a tribute to my dad.
Okay.
It was a timepiece that I have been after for quite some time. My dad wore 36 millimeter Datejust. That was gem set. He had a two-tone Jubilee dial Datejust with the diamond indices. And so I wanted to kind of create my own story, but also be synonymous with, his early watch collecting. It's
a great piece. It's a lovely dial. I am a fan of vintage Rolex, so you definitely won me over with the piece. And I believe, the reason why I like vintage Rolex so much is because of the case dimensions and proportions and the design. I feel like the Oyster case was perfect when they did it back then. A Datejust and a Day-Day, in my opinion, should be a 36 millimeter. It's just what I've grown used to. And it's a very, very handsome piece.
Thank you.
Yeah. I will go next. We'll save our guest of honor for last. I am wearing a new watch. This one is on loan from some very, very good friends over at H. Moser & Chi. This is the Streamliner Flyback Chrono 2.0.
Nice.
It's a really, really great timepiece. Blue fume dial. The chronograph is all centered on the dial. You got your seconds, and then you've got your 60-minute scale just on top of the hour and minutes, which gives you a really, really cool layout of the dial. I kind of love the hash marks that are going around the dial. It feels really sporty, almost like a high concept car. The bracelet is incredibly comfortable. One of the more comfortable bracelets I've tried. I love the action on the clutch. It's just so snappy. Feels really nice. If I were to take this off and show you the movement is beautiful. Integrated chronograph movement. It's called the HMC 907, I believe, developed in collaboration with Augengraf, who does some amazing movements. And just a really, really great piece. It's kind of one of those, if you know, you know. I've worn this all around New York City. No one has any idea what's on my wrist. But I kind of like that. I get to enjoy it for myself. And when you run into those people that do know, it strikes up an interesting conversation.
It looks great, too, from the way it plays with light and on your wrist. It's really well.
It's been an absolute joy to test drive. You have a special watch on.
I do.
From a very special brand.
I hope so.
What do you got on the wrist today?
So today I'm wearing the Automatic from Biver, our new timepiece.
Incredible.
In rose gold with the gold dial and anthracite hands and indices. This watch is our new timepiece, our fully new developed micro rotor movement that Dubois Desprats built and engineered to our request. So fully new movement, kind of will be the base of what we build our complications on top in the future.
Okay.
And it's special in two ways, I believe, if I had to pinpoint really two aspects to make it somewhat short, otherwise I could expand for hours, is that, first of all, compared to the first release, which is a Grand Complication, Rinse Repeater, Tourbillon, we kind of went back to the essence of watchmaking with a simple time-only watch and kind of channeling this sort of simplistic, essential challenge to make a beautiful, simple watch, which is also, it's actually quite challenging, I have to say, all the whole thought process, etc. And the second reason is because this dial and this series of collection with gold dials really reflects our love for vintage timepieces, channeling some aesthetics from back in the days when they used to play a lot with different finishing on the dial, very inspired by some, brilliant pocket watches and the way it catches light. Although having one or two touches of contemporary design that really set ourselves apart with the Biver kind of design language. Yeah, super happy to be wearing that. And I have to say, I'm a little proud.
Yeah, you should be. Listen, it's a really handsome piece. That gold color is, I think you guys struck a really, really nice note with that. It's very soft, a nice blend of rose and yellow, kind of amber, honeyish almost. It's very handsome. And it's interesting to see, and I think this is something I want to get into later throughout the conversation. But looking at where you guys started and where you guys are going, I think makes for an interesting conversation. And I would love for you to shed some light on that. Shoot, ready for the shoot. Yo, man, what you doing?
I'm bidding on watches on getbezel.com.
What you bidding on?
Yo, don't even worry about it. I just want to watch.
What'd you win?
Listen. I just told you. Go to getbezel.com or download the Bezel app at the App Store. Don't worry about it.
But first, I'd like for you to tell us exactly, in our viewership and our listenership, where we are right now. Because if anyone's looking at this, we have to provide some context.
For sure.
So right now we're sitting in a barn.
Exactly.
But we happen to be on a very specific property. Where are we?
So we're here in Geneva by the Lake Léman, about 30 minutes outside of Geneva, where we decided to make our nest for this project, at least for the first part of the life of this company. And very interesting place because, first of all, we're native from this state of Switzerland. At least I am native. And my father, when he got the Swiss nationality, also was then put native of this canton. So very close to our hearts, right outside of Geneva to provide some practical, transportation, whether it's clients or people coming through Geneva. But most importantly, we're 30 minutes from La Vallée de Joux, which is renowned for its watchmaking, and most of our partners are there, most of our watchmakers as well. And at the same time, fits perfectly what we're trying to achieve, blending traditional with modernity here in an old farm that was restored, that is in the middle of, as you can see, fields, and kind of channels that authentic watchmaker, what you would imagine of where watches are assembled. So it's where we made our home about 2 years ago, and we're super happy to be here. And you can see we have quite a good quality of life here.
Yes, this is very nice. I think what's interesting is, at least for many of us back in the States, listening to you kind of describe this, right? There's definitely some sentimentality there, but it's also a strategic business move in that you are essentially located between all of the areas in which you need to be to optimize your business.
Exactly.
And I think, at least for us in the States, sometimes we may take for granted or just be completely oblivious into how communal the watchmaking process is. Can you elaborate a little bit on that and how you guys are working with those around you, other companies, collaborating, how you're finding the watchmakers to really build this brand?
Yeah, so first of all, you have to imagine that the ecosystem of watchmaking, even though it's become a worldwide industry, here in Switzerland is a very tight-knit kind of a community and in the way it works, and it's very embedded in Swiss culture, and more particularly in the cultures where it flourished, often mountain regions or more rural regions than in cities.
Yeah.
So you have few different regions. You have Vallée Joux, Chaux-de-Fonds, Jura, and a bit of Geneva. Those are the main poles today. But the partners we work with, for instance, Dubois des Pras, are based in La Vallée Joux. First of all, they were a partner amongst many that we work in that area. That is because of their renown and their quality and our personal relationship with the people there. But it's also because La Vallée Joux has historically channeled, very important movement aesthetics and has been really, it's the type of watchmaking that we love most of all. And our watchmakers at the same time, who have to be able to work both on grand complication, do decoration, and be those talented, creative watchmakers,
Right.
often live in that region because that's where most of the employment is. And for us, we have to be attractive for them to want to work here.
Yeah.
Today, we're reaching, let's say, our flight altitude in terms of capacity of our watchmakers and decorators, where we're today 8.
Okay.
So 4 watchmakers and 4 decorators. And this is probably where we're going to stay it's going to plateau for the next 6 to 8 months. I have to admit, it was not so challenging at the beginning, finding watchmakers, because obviously the excitement of a new project, high quality products, our philosophy of working, which we'll discover over the next few days, which is very back to tradition, one watchmaker, one watch, responsibility, and no process, no methods. But today, it's true that we've reached also a level where it's becoming increasingly hard and we're facing the same, difficulty to find the right people as well. So
Yeah.
The word that stuck out when Perry was speaking of where we are is community and communal, and how everyone kind of works together to reach one mission. As we took a tour throughout, just the facility, you can kind of see there's like a home aesthetic. People feel great to work there. We had lunch.
Yeah, these aren't the typical working conditions that we're used to back home.
Exactly. Yes. I mean, especially back home in the States, work is not really
enjoyment place.
Yes, and this is very, very much enjoyment.
I think that's an excellent point, right? Which brings me to my next question. We were talking a little bit back as we were having lunch, and one of the things that we touched on was how crowded the space of the watch industry has gotten. Whose idea was it to start this brand, and why?
So straight up, it's my father's idea. Back when he decided to launch, I was still in college, and I didn't have those type of ambitions. I had already worked for a while in the industry with Philips, and then with COVID, came back to Switzerland and picked up my studies where I had left off. He always wanted to do a brand after his official retirement from where he used to work before.
Yes.
And it had always been in his head, and there were multiple ideas and all that. But I was kind of always sort of an observer, or giving out some feedback on what I thought was correct or not correct, or what he should do, what he shouldn't do. And then when COVID happened, obviously everything locked down and things kind of went quiet. And during COVID, unfortunately, my father had quite a bad biking accident, which threatened his life. And I think that coming out of that, he felt like there's no time to wait. I've realized the fragility of life.
Right.
And I want to connect back to where I started, making a small family-run company, making high-end movements, high-end watchmaking. And I think it came from it came from his soul that he really wanted to do this. And at that time, luckily for me, he thought I was ready and took me on board, and we decided to start from a blank page. But it's definitely his idea.
So he comes to you, he wants to start this thing.
Yeah. First of all, I don't believe him.
Okay.
I'm like, whatever, it's like the 5th time you're saying these kind of things. So I he says it and I'm like, do your thing. Get into your project. It will keep you occupied for a while. And bear in mind, he just got out of the hospital at that time. So, we had to take care of many of the businesses that he ran and things, family matters. And we weren't, we would be happy if he was just occupied having his brains on something rather than going out straight away biking, because that's pretty much his character. And I was just at home when my mother was there. I was living in Lausanne back then, and he was on the radio for some interview regarding something completely non-watch related. He was talking about how fake news can be used in marketing. And they kind of wanted his opinion, etc. And in the middle of the interview, he says, yeah, and I'm going to launch my own brand called Biver with my son. And I'm at home a bit like,
Put you
wow.
on the spot.
And knowing my father, you know that when he makes it public that way, then now we're talking business.
Yes.
Yeah.
And his, you can read that. He said it before, but I think it was his way to push himself into it.
Yeah.
You know, a bit like when you're about to dive in the water, you don't want it's a bit too high, and suddenly you're just like, okay, I close my eyes and I just go for it. I think that was that moment for him. And the truth is that many people have not realized, but we felt it both physically and mentally, is that at that moment we had nothing.
Right.
Not even deposited the brand name. And in fact, what happened was somebody deposited the brand name right away, and we had to get involved with the lawyers to get it back, etc.
Wow.
So it was really unprepared, like complete freestyle.
So that brings me into my next question, because a keyword that you use is blank page, right? When you refer to your timepieces, it's starting from scratch. And you build out this canvas and create these beautiful timepieces. So how was it for you and your dad to kind of start all over, right? With so much history that your family has contributed to horology, what was it like to kind of crawl to then go into running again?
First of all, terrible. I don't know. First off, this is, you can feel the heaviness when I say this, but yeah, it's tough. Working father and son has its, good sides, has his downsides as well.
Yes.
So it takes a lot of time, patience. It takes also a lot of being able to, question yourself. You have to always be ready to live in doubt.
Right.
Because obviously when you take something that's existent, you often see its potentiality. When you come from a blank page, there's nothing right, nothing wrong, nothing that can be improved. And I think especially now, at the time of being here together and speaking and having already one release and now going to the second release, even during that time, which is not that long, about a year and a half, you keep on learning. I believe that, and also a great thing and a great mindset to be in is to never become complacent. But it's definitely been tough, and I think that we needed to pick our battles, choose exactly where we wanted to go, because obviously today with the state of watchmaking, which is a crowded place, but at the same time offers huge perspective. You can kind of imagine watchmaking in any way you want. We have crazy artists making horological machines that are amazing, and people going back to the real tradition of making understated, very classical watches. So it was kind of tough, but we picked our battles, came back to our love, took all our decisions with the heart rather than with the brain, which also has its plus and minuses. It was fun. Today I can say that, no regrets.
Yes.
But definitely there's been moments in the process where you're just lost.
Yeah. I want to ask, obviously, your dad put you guys out there, you teamed up with him. It's very clear that you are passionate about this and you share that passion with him. But you didn't have to do this. What was it that you found within yourself that when he did this, you decided, okay, I'm going to join you? Because you didn't have to.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Look, I think if we strip it down to the essential, it's really working with my father. Being able to live that experience, to be able to one day say that I've done it, I think this is the biggest motivation of all. Then what comes around is obviously my love for architecture, for design, which since I'm very young has been something that I love. And working at Philips into the vintage world, let's say, it was an amazing learning curve because you get to know about the history, about how brands have evolved and the choices they make and how things were produced, etc. There's a whole array of knowledge that you learn. But one thing that I always felt frustrating, which today is sort of compensated by doing this project, is the fact that when you have a vintage watch in your hand, you cannot change anything.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's done. It's over. It's like an art piece that's been produced. It's out in the world, and you can't change it anymore. And I feel that ability to be creative and to kind of look into what we would have changed on other things and kind of adapt it in our vision today is something that always drives me to get on board this project. You know, you had Yoni Ben Yehuda on your show.
Yeah.
I work with him a lot,
That's
and
our friend.
he can testify I'm a very bad businessman. So I did it in nothing regarding, whether it's a business plan or starting a company. This is not my part, and I'm really terrible at it. I'm really in for the emotion, the passion, the creativity, and to create something. I have a lot of respect for what my father has done, and if I'm here and I have this opportunity, it's super unfair because probably there are people my age that would have deserved more. So now that I've been given this opportunity, I just, when he said it, I just wanted to make the most out of it and be respectful to his legacy. And my goal is, I don't care about the financials that he can run or the team can handle. My point is to make the best watches, and any watch that's bearing our family name that we have gained renown for because of him. We want it to be the best watches each time. And that's what I strive for.
But it's your legacy too, right? And
Fingers crossed.
yeah, well, in many ways, like you're supporting your father in this, but it also, you guys share the same name. It bears your name, right? And so I imagine that comes with it's a lot of responsibility, and there's definitely a certain level of weight to bear, because in some ways you could say you are stepping into his shoes, right? There's a sort of passing of the torch that's happening. How do you deal with that? How do you synthesize that, right? The idea that you are next in line, and essentially, through sharing the same passion, building a family business to take on his legacy to the next level.
I think that at least that's my perspective. You have to go heads on with, a very realistic state of the solution. I can never really throw away that responsibility.
Yeah.
It's there. It's an opportunity. It's a blessing. So you just have to work and do the best. Now, something that's really helped me, and especially working, and that experience of working with my father, both for us and for the people around, is that we are very different. And accepting those differences and knowing each other's strong, qualities and not so qualities.
Okay.
Enables me, at least from my perception, to get in his shoes, yes, because that's what is natural and that's how people will view it regardless of the reality. But at the same time, I know what I am and what he is and where I stand and where he'll...
You aren't trying to be him.
Never.
Right.
I think
you're yourself.
I think that also comes back to the education we've received, right? From being children. My parents were always super easy on that. No pressure at all. It was very relaxed. We could be interested in many things. There was no pressure to really fit that mold of, okay, you have to work in the same business, etc. And so I don't feel that way that I have to be him. And honestly, today would be very arrogant of me to ever consider one day that I'll be having the same career. Hopefully I can do a good job. And I think that I'm part of a situation where I'm more here to enhance his legacy as a continuation rather than a renewal. Maybe a renewal will come with my kids if we're still around and the brand still exists and they're interested in taking over. But because we're so close and we started this adventure together, like we built it, the two of them, so 2 generations in one, I see myself very infused to his legacy.
Yes.
There's no rupture in any way.
Yeah. You had something?
I was gonna speak to the word that comes to mind is eternity, right? And how passing the torch, the name Biver continues to live on, especially for yourself, right? Expecting a child, a father to be, right? And also being able to say, well, you can make these decisions on your own when you get to that point. Maybe you don't have to fill the same shoes that I do, right? You can go on to do whatever you want. My question to you is, how are you looking into the future And what will that look like for the next 50 years that Biver continues to contribute to horology?
So luckily for me, as my baby is very young, I didn't get much time to really think about that. But I would say that ultimately, I think you feel when somebody's passionate about something, and that transpires. Now, does it cling on to people around? Do they get that passion and kind of get into it? Maybe, maybe not. At the end of the day, I just want my children to be happy.
Yeah.
I want, obviously, this to be something I can build their future with. Let's again be realistic and honest. This also is my job today, and I wanted to provide for my family. I fingers crossed one of them will, because I hope to have many, my wife. But, fingers crossed one of them will take over. And if not, for any reasons, just find the right people to carry on the name.
Yeah.
And I think it really comes down to education. And I trust my wife and myself that, we'll do our best. And then ultimately, my brothers and sisters also have a bunch of kids. So, we'll just pick and choose which is the best one.
I want to talk about the watches. I remember seeing the first Carillon Tourbillon. And admitted,
you can be honest.
I'll be honest. When I first saw it, I didn't know what to think. It took me a minute. I've been around the industry media long enough to get to the point to where I realize, okay, I recognize when something makes me feel something. I don't know what I'm feeling. I need to sit with it. And I didn't know what to think. And then I saw the next piece, the skeleton. And it started to dawn on me. And I was like, this is interesting. And what I found interesting, two things. Your first watch, grand complication, like tourbillon minute repeater. Okay, bold move, right? Very, very bold. And I was like, that's interesting that that's the first thing that you guys would lead with. And then sitting with the watch and starting to see the different iterations roll out, something else dawned on me. This is, and it feels like this is where not only the relationship with you and your father come into play, but meeting some of the team that you guys have built and seeing how you work. This doesn't feel like a piece that we would expect from Biver, right? This feels totally different. Today, I can honestly say the watch is beautiful. I think it's really interesting that you guys were able to take a grand complication and really make it look like a sports watch. It's something that looks and feels like you can wear it every day. I want to speak to the design choices, right? Why a minute repeater as the first series of timepieces that you chose to do? And you guys are doing a lot of gem setting, a lot of stonework, things that we wouldn't traditionally expect from the Biver name is now the Biver name. Why these choices?
First of all, thank you for saying you think the watch is beautiful. It's very appreciated.
Yes.
I really, really love the bracelet, as a matter of fact.
It has something to it. I think that in the way we conceived, let's say even before talking about the minute repeater in particular, just the design language in general, for sure we knew that we were entering in some sort of troubled water. I don't know if in English you can say that, but in a way that we knew that it was traditional enough that it wasn't like completely disruptive, but at the same time had some modernity in it, but it wasn't like, it's actually a really fine sweet spot in the middle to define something that could be neoclassic, is a word we like to use. Very architectured. It takes a lot of inspiration from Art Deco watches from 60s and 70s. It was, we knew we were coming in with something that would be very Marmite, as they say in English.
Yes.
Love it or hate it.
Yes.
Same for the complication, because grand complication, high price point.
Yeah.
We knew we weren't going to make only friends, which played out the way we would have imagined.
Sure.
But we knew we wanted to go down that road as the Carillon Tourbillon was always said to be a watch apart from the brand. It's the launch piece, it's the talking piece, it's what gives you your medals.
Yes.
It's being able to work on a complication at that level, being to make a team that are capable of producing that, showing the quality. It was about many things, about where the brands wants to go.
Right.
You have these stone dials where we made it kind of our thing to work on these stone dials, again, to be kind of different, to mix contemporary with vintage, because stone dials have relatively often been used, but we kind of try to bring in with some aesthetics that are very contemporary. And gem set as well, because we want to really expand on creativity and design language throughout all the different types of artworks that you can find on a watch. Engravings, gem setting, working with stone. Now you'll see soon enamel
But
as
it
well.
isn't just that, right? There's also like a level of care, which we've explored through conversations that you guys are applying to these pieces, because there's a level of design, there's a level of finishing that's happening that goes unseen by the end user.
Yeah, so this was also the dream, or let's say the fantasy of building a watch brand that can, fulfill this need to make the best watches possible. Not necessarily for the world, but first of all for us.
Yes.
You're putting your name on the dial. You're signing, you're signing with your own blood. So it's that search for perfection, and it's that uncompromising spirit of saying, we will think of everything, even to the smallest details, and even if it's not picked up on.
Yeah.
It's for us, it's for our team, it's for our own reward.
Yes.
And this is where we, get in the most of our satisfaction, to make these pieces as great as we possibly can. And I think that we want, on a creative level, on a design level, just be able to expand on concepts. Sometimes right, sometimes they are not so great, but the idea is really to be able to explore. I'm, again, being hugely influenced by architecture and design. I like to see watches as a way of exploring ideas, exploring what can be brought to a watch, what can be taken away from a watch as well. Because you can, less is more sometimes. And all these things together make it that we're trying to create a watch brand, but of which at the center is art, creativity, craftsmanship, and, uncompromised ideas where we say, okay, let's have this crazy idea. Okay, let's go. Let's do it. And try and be where most regular, healthy, rational people would be like, no way we're going down that road. And sometimes when you act this way, sometimes you burn yourself. Sometimes, it ends up in great, but just like any great artist, it's just about continuing creation, right?
Yeah.
In life, there are choices and options. Choices set the tone. Options change the mood. And while you aren't able to drive 2 cars, you can, however, travel with 2 watches. Introducing the Shuttle, a traveling watch case in collaboration with WCP and Wolf. Godspeed.
Available at wristcheckpod.com.
This episode of WCP is sponsored by Bezel, a trusted marketplace for buying and selling watches. With over 18,000 and counting watches listed from both private sellers and professional dealers, you have your pick of the litter from brands like Rolex, AP, Patek, and more. Bezel is one of the highest rated marketplaces for watches. Inside the Bezel app, you can make offers on watches, buy them outright, bid at auction, all with confidence knowing each timepiece is authenticated by an in-house team of experts. For more information, visit getbezel.com or search Bezel in the App Store and download the app today. And you can see it. I mean, you look from the first piece up until one of the most recent pieces that you guys showcase, where you guys are doing almost like guilloche work in the stones, right? And creating these amazing patterns on these dials. That was a really great piece. And then something else happened, and I was kind of blown away. and it was Catharus.
Yeah.
That was a killer piece.
Thank you.
So originally released for Only Watch.
Yes.
Where did the idea for this watch come from? I'm curious about why the name Catharus. Whose idea it was to remove the time display. And I'll tell you why I really, really enjoyed that. And I sat with it. You know, when you look at the stonework on the dial, you got the meteorite moon, the fluted arc going across it. It's one of those things that if you love watches, you often catch yourself looking at your timepiece, even if you don't want to tell the time. And
Exactly.
I can't think of a better way to interact with a minute repeater than to have it on a watch that you literally, that's the only way you can use it to tell the time. So where did the idea come about from putting this together, and why the name Catharus?
So it's a cool story. I mean, it's a fun one. So my wife, her mother works a lot in the art world.
Okay.
Very popular here in the Swiss art scene. And we were with some artist friends of hers, and one artist in particular that I really hugely appreciate her work. And basically went out for dinner, had some drinks, and then went to an after party in her studio. And I was just about to launch the brand, telling her about the fact of being a minute repeater, telling time, the way it was invented when you could not see, you didn't have light, etc. And she told me, you know, it's crazy. I hate wearing watches because I feel as though time is a burden that's imposed on me. And time, stripped into its, you know, most essential concept, is basically the degradation of matter.
Yeah.
Over a period of time, you measure how you degrade, right? So it's a bit, she was always saying, it's like having a countdown to your, you know, to your death. And I was like, yeah, that's true. And, you know, it made me reflect on that. And she told me, you know what, one day, why don't you make me a watch that has no hands, no indices, and that I am the sole, I am in command of time. If I want to know it, I'll ask for it.
Wow.
But if I don't want, it's not imposed on me. And I thought to myself, yeah,
That's a challenge.
that's a great watch. And it's an interesting concept because it goes back to our roots. So we're not doing something that breaks any tradition. We're actually going back to the fundamentals of why the minute repeater was invented in the first place. It was a bit, you know, we were a bit unsure where we would go with this. This is why also it was a watch that was introduced to Only Watch as a unique piece for an auction that we still have, because obviously we didn't participate in the sale in the end. But the idea was really to try something new and to use all that space where we have normally hands and indices, to max out and to use it as a canvas, as it was, you know, influenced by an artist. Let's try and make a work of art. And usually you would think to yourself, oh, I'm going to make a cloisonné enamel, or, you know, some techniques that are very common in watch industry, although beautiful, and that we'll also expand on in the future, and we have projects in that direction. But this for this particular one, it was so close to the launch of the brand, and we wanted to really implement our identity, stones, gemstones, etc. And we found those two people, one who made the upper part, one who made the seal part, where we said, okay, we'll put some sapphires that are set in waves. We'll put meteorite for the moon, obsidian for the sky, opal for the stars. And we just went, you know, completely crazy on that watch.
Wow.
And it was actually a super, super interesting reaction we had from this watch. I think it cemented our, you know, it made some people that were, as you said, had a feeling about the brand. They know what words to put on it. It made them understand. I see what they're into now.
I agree. I think it did, because, you know, one of the things that we also spoke about off camera is the hesitation for a lot of collectors to get into new brands, and just thinking like, is this a cash grab? And obviously the other watches are amazing. They're great, but that family name on those watches, that presentation, it's like, okay, where is this going? Catharus, I feel like, to your point, really brought things together, and it made sense. It was like, oh, this is not about money, right? It's a business, but what you guys are speaking to is not about that. You're speaking to artistry, master craftsmanship, time, care, intent, all of these things that are encapsulated in true artistic endeavors and artwork. I want to talk to you about something that I'm sure you're hearing from a lot of collectors: pricing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I said I'm terrible at business. My math is not great.
It's okay. So, listen, I can't afford a $300,000 watch, but I can appreciate yet.
It's more than 300,000.
Okay, $500,000 watch. But I can appreciate it. But because I can't afford it, you tell me that's how much it costs. I say, okay, whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm enjoying the watch. For someone that can, who is still very, they are curious as to why. I think the way I want to phrase this question is, what is a collector getting when they purchase a Biver watch? Because it seems like it's a lot greater than just purchasing a watch.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a fair assessment, because that's what we're trying to achieve. Mm. First of all, I think it's important to put in context that when launching a brand, it takes time to cement the idea and what you represent as a brand.
Right.
This is why, in the first place, that human contact, that one-on-one relationship where we're able to speak, is the best tool. Because when you have the people in front of you and you understand them, most things fall into line and you start understanding the bigger picture on a broader sense. And this is exactly the same thing we did with our collectors that bought the miniature Peter, is sitting down, often really pushing hard for them to come collect their watches here, or to at least visit the place, meet the people, watchmakers, show them the project, what's coming next, etc. I think, first of all, if you took just the watch, you have all the quality, you have the great finishing and everything that's encapsulated in a watch. Sure. Now, this is just part of what you buy, because you can buy that from many brands. Exactly. I don't think we are alone at that level. I think we are many to share that spot. I think what you're buying is the long-term vision, is being part of a family, being part of a buying into a brand that is looking, just as we were talking about Catharus, to create art. Yeah. And for that to last in time, really have that dedication towards our collectors as well. I think it's about buying the message. It's about buying a father and son story, about a legacy, about a respect for a man's career and where we go next, about design. And to really get that feel and to sort of feel, we try to implicate our collectors so that they feel as part of the journey. Yeah. That they feel they are essential cornerstones on which the brand will build, which they are, in fact. And it's interesting because you take my father's career, marketing genius. Yes. You think about Omega with James Bond, Cindy Crawford, Hublot with the football and the ambassadors.
And Blancpain with the quartz.
Exactly. Yeah. Marketing at its best. And today, we kind of shifted that towards experience. And humanity and emotion. It's about that relationship that we share. Each of our watches, we have a personal relationship with the client who's buying the watch. And we are a story of humans before being a story of watches. Even if you take the whole build-up, an accident, a father, a person that wants to do his last project, knowing that it's going to be his last project, conscious of his finitude and his father. It's really about the people. And for us, something that is important is also the people that work for us. Our employees, giving them the opportunity to do their job at the best, making them happy, making traditional watchmaking perjure in time, keeping that high quality standards. And I think here is the best place, and you've been here for a couple hours now in Geneva. Even the place is part of the product. Yes. Yeah, it is. It's part of what you feel when you get a watch. It's that atmosphere. We're trying to build this 360, that we talked about it off camera, but I'm a real believer of that 360 experience, that it's not only about the watch, but it's about, okay, where does that watch need to be worn?
Yes.
Yeah.
to what music, what should I listen to when I'm wearing it?
Yes.
What car should I drive? Where should I be? What restaurant should I be in?
Yes.
And I think this is the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
And I can't lie, you know, in 18 months of activity, I've not maybe achieved that with all our collectors. I've tried to, we've tried to, and in the future we'll even try harder. It takes time to put in these concepts and to really grow it, because we need to grow as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like a newborn. We still don't know exactly what the brand is.
Right.
Yes.
Right? We're still learning, we're still improving. And but that's part of the journey, and that's part of you get when you buy a Biver watch.
Yeah.
It was something that to kind of chime in on your response to Perry's question. I think there's a huge value proposition in the passion over profit, and something that us Americans call an out the trunk kind of marketing. Shout out to Larry June. But that out of the trunk kind of mentality where you're meeting your end consumer, like for them to personally meet you, to come to, you know, the facility where everything is done from start to finish. I think that is what you get, to be a part of a family. And it's something that's missing in the watch industry. You do have some brands that are able to execute it, but I think there's something about the way the Biver brand has been able to open that up. You know, maybe TMI, but we took a shower here. Like, you know, we didn't check it.
TMI. Yeah.
We literally were here. It was like, welcome to my home.
But no, I get your point. It's you guys have a way about you, you know, you and your dad, the other members of this organization, where there's a level of authenticity that runs and is the current of the brand, you know, and we've long seen it in interviews with you and your father. We're starting to see that, I think, bleed into the product via your story. To your point, you mentioned another word that I want to touch on, because I also feel that this is a big part of what the Biver brand is. And it's tradition, right? And it's not only the family tradition. It's not only the tradition of career, right? But the tradition of watchmaking.
It is.
It is. And to do something like this at such a high level, because you feel it's the right thing to do, I see it being of great benefit for watchmakers everywhere, right? We're moving into a time, you know, we joke all the time in watches, no one actually needs a watch.
And that's for sure not.
That's going to ring much truer in the next 5-10 years, especially with AI. You even think about the time it'll pop into your head, you're not going to need it.
Yeah.
So what will we have? It's going to be the experiences. It's going to be the artistry. It's going to be the craftsmanship. It's going to be the connection. These are the things that I think I'm hearing from you, that I'm seeing in my time that I'm spending with you, that I think that are really, really going to win over collectors. You know, there's something different. Maybe you can't put your finger on it, but you can feel it.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely, I think, like the soul of these mechanical objects.
Yeah.
And something that is crazy is obviously you have all the crazy engineering, world records, etc. But ultimately, mechanically, the watches work just as the same as they were invented,
Yes.
like the main principles 200 years ago. And I think watches today have an important role as the last testimony that you can wear of human creativity, innovation, and crazy ideas to build a mechanical piece like that. Today, even the most amazing cars incorporate technology, etc. Watches are one of the last remaining kind of collectible of a great part of the story of humankind, right? And to kind of bounce back on both subjects we just touched, I think that this is a perfect platform to keep human relationships alive, because you're talking about the craftsmanship of people, you're talking about mechanics that were invented by humans to tell the time and that are still done the same way, done by the same humans. You know, there is that idea of of the people behind it that is really strong.
Yeah.
And something where I don't know if we are the ones who, I mean, I'm glad the shower was amazing, but, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's if it's us or just when you're very, authentic and just yourself. But I believe that one thing is great is that when you come here, the people that you meet are the people that run the brand.
Yeah.
And that means that if we want to do something crazy,
Yes.
we'll do it. And I think that I don't know how spontaneous makes it all the more magic.
Yes.
And I think in every experience you have, you need that little touch of magic. And unfortunately, even some brands that try to, achieve it, often when structures become large, you have less, which is normal, right? But I think this is something that we want to expand on. And you will see also across the next couple of days, the idea is let's just have fun. And that's why I do the link to your question, because we're just making watches. And especially ourselves, like if we approach it with some kind of intellectual honesty, we're making watches, we're making high-end watches that are reserved for a small fraction of the population, which is kind of unfair because sometimes you have people that are much more passionate about these watches and these mechanics that will never be able to afford these sort of timepieces. But even more in that segment, we're not revolutioning the world. We're not.
Right.
We should take sometimes as an industry, we should take a step back, have fun.
I agree.
And we're because of technologies like Apple Watch and smartphones and that, and maybe AI, as you said, that you'll just think of the time, it will pop in your head. We left as an industry, we left it. We're not a business anymore.
Yeah.
We're fully focused on leisure,
Yes.
on fun, on art. And even if you look at the Swiss exportation numbers, Switzerland, which is known for watchmaking, but today, if you look at entry-level watches or mid-level watches, exportations or production in Switzerland are ramping down quite quickly. We're concentrating now on the high end because technologies have expanded, and even in the US, you have brilliant watchmakers that make both entry-level watches
and high-end pieces,
or guys like Joshua Shapiro who make or Fleming who US but made here. Joshua's made in the US, but now it's kind of spread it out. So I think even as an industry and for the future of watchmaking, we should focus on that human side, on that fun, light-headed sort of attitude, because we're not doing nuclear science. We're just making watches that don't tell the time as accurately as smartphones.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
This has been a lot of fun. I have a last question I kind of want to touch on. And I want to ask you about what your vision is for the brand moving forward. Because I think what's interesting is, right, and you started with high complications, and now you're moving to this new piece that releases in September. So what is your vision for the brand going forward, and how does this fit into that? So
our brand is really similar to what my father did with Blancpain, which is, first of all, he always said that talking about school or any type of thing is to be a contemporary dancer, you need to be the best at ballet. You need to learn your classics to then disrupt and be able to do new things.
Yeah.
And in that regard, we will build now a collection over the next 10 years of all the traditional complications found in watchmaking. Chronographs, perpetual calendars, minute repeater, tourbillon, what am I missing? Time only.
Yes.
And split second, although the split second I have something in store.
Okay.
A bit different.
Okay.
But the idea is to build that collection, to build the masterpieces of watchmaking, again, linking back to tradition, always bringing a little Biver twist to it, something contemporary, so that we're not just repeating the past, but actually going forward. And to some extent, this watch represents the canvas on which some of these complications are going to be built. Obviously, we want to work with high-end principles, even of engineering. So a chronograph will be in fully integrated chronograph rather than a modular one.
Yep.
Just because that's in line with our brand positioning and the way we see watchmaking. But for perpetual calendars and other maybe fun and quirky complications, this micro rotor movement will also be the base on which we will add complication on top. So it's going back to basics, but at the same time laying the foundation for what is to come. And as this movement compared to the minute repeater was an ébauche that we did with Le Cercle des Horlogers, changing a few things to match our standards and our philosophy, our design, etc. On this, we really went from a blank page. So it's also starting to expand on our movement architecture, movement design. But ultimately, if you ask me where we want to go in the next 10 years, I think we want to become a brand or sort of a label rather than a brand known for creating watches with intent, with a purpose, with creative direction, with, ideas in mind that we want to execute at our best way possible. And I think we also know that we want to open up and be a brand that also speaks to the non-watch collector or big aficionado. We want to be a watch company known for its design, its communication, the quality of its content, its spirit, its atmosphere. I want to produce watches. That's something I used to say to clients when I worked at Philips, but I used to tell them, don't ask me if a watch will suit you or not suit you. Buy a watch for that when you wear it on your wrist, it transports you to something else.
Yeah.
Some watches have the particularity, like you take Richard Mille. That's when I wear a Richard Mille, I can feel like this Silicon Valley tech entrepreneur, Rick Rubin type of wabi-sabi house design and, wearing the Richard Mille super complicated piece with like a nice hypercar.
Yeah.
And then when you wear something like an AP perpetual calendar, yellow gold dial, you're in a Napolitan suit in Capri with a nice convertible vintage red Alfa Romeo.
Yeah.
I think watches also have this particularity that they can make you dream and make you embody something that is not your current, what you're experiencing right now. And I think there's a bit of both. You need watches for every day, and you need watches that when you wear, you
dream.
You dream.
Wow.
I love it. It's a wonderful dream.
You always change watches, so I think that you're very in line with this.
I have so many different personalities when I put on a different
man
watch.
who never repeats a watch.
If you want some of my weird design processes I go through,
please,
is when I design watch, even more when I can actually have it physically, when it's not only a render but I can actually touch the piece. I always listen to 3 different types of music wearing that watch in the car.
Okay.
Speakers on, full sound, cruising. And if the watch appeals to me while listening to these 3 musics that are completely different, that are always different, right? It depends on the mood and the moment and the music I'm listening to, then it's a pass.
Nice.
And also fashion. If I can wear the same watch or think of the same watch wearing a suit, in pajamas and like casual, then you got it.
You got it.
Because again, I think that, one day my dream is to write a book about something that won't interest many people, but just my vision on design. Because I think that a few things I would try and implement, like, today one of the biggest schools of design is you always have to do a balance between form and function. And these 2 kind of poles have defined all the trends in design over the past 50 years. Like, okay, those were more function, those were more form, etc. I think that to that you can add origin. You have some watches that really, or objects or architecture that feels amazing, but just in that one place.
Yeah.
You take the Chrysler building. It could not be anywhere.
Couldn't exist anywhere else
than in New York. That architecture is obviously Art Deco, and you have everything.
Yes.
But it has New York also in the blood.
Yes.
Like it runs in the concrete that it's New York. And I think origin is one thing that's super important. And the second is environment. It's kind of the same, but environment is more the philosophy of what's around.
Yeah.
So but that can move on, that can change with time. But some, old school design, like from Le Corbusier or things like that, minimalist interiors, and you can imagine the type of music that's playing there. Maybe there's a guy with some Japanese incense, like, you know, like, or some sage. Like, there's some things that fit right, especially when they're surrounded by other elements. I don't know how to explain some things.
Well, they add to it. They kind of accentuate and bring out different qualities of those objects, right?
Exactly.
They enhance it.
It's like a sneakerhead that walks in wearing a suit, but with some like Jordan 4s on or Jordan 11. That's more of the suit tuxedo type of sneaker. He might be wearing a suit and he's in an office on the 60th floor of a building in Manhattan, and everything looks formal, just his sneakers. But when you look at him, you can already hear the music he's listening to in his car.
Yeah.
You can imagine how his house looks like, what he does on the weekend. Like, these type of things I think are really interesting to expand upon when in regards to design.
I think it's important, you know, especially when you're creating products, to think about how people will live with them. And I'm curious whether or not, you know, many of your colleagues in this industry actually give that any thought.
I can't speak on their behalf, unfortunately.
Exactly.
but you know, it's also, and that, sorry if I'm,
please.
because now we've touched my core. You've touched me right in the heart.
Yeah.
But it's also about the shelf life of a watch.
Yes.
You know, a watch, when you buy it, it's an investment for the next, hopefully 20 years, even more, maybe a lifetime.
Yeah.
And so when designing a product like a watch, you have to have an additional thought to the way it's going to be lived with, because it's probably going to live with someone through many different phases. You think about somebody that buys a watch or receives a watch in his teens. He goes through college, marriage, divorce, childbirth, work, changing work. Everything can happen in a lifetime. Your tastes can change.
Absolutely.
You know, everything comes and goes. And I think that in particular watches or jewelry is the same thing. You have to imagine that you're designing something that will live throughout somebody's life, and how this object, to be an object that is appreciated, should be able to evolve with time as well.
It's a very interesting concept.
Because, you know, both of you have watch collections.
We do.
Sometimes a watch is great for 2 years. I don't know if you already had that. And
all the time. Sometimes 2 weeks.
Sometimes it just fades away.
You fall out of love with it.
Exactly. And I think achieving this is hard to have. And also it's hard because not everybody shares the same taste. So obviously you have to think that some people, it will have that effect and some not. But striving to get there is what counts. And never become complacent on that. And you know, even when we do like unique pieces for some of our collectors, and they have wild requests, you know, crazy color dial or weird combination, we always try to walk through a creative process with them where we expand on it, saying, look, you might want that now, but you're investing, you know, a certain amount of money in a watch. Let's design it so that in 15 years, you won't look at yourself like when you look at high school photos and be like, why did I have this haircut? And I think this is the beauty of art. But at the same time, you have to accept, like an artist, that once something is done, you can't go back.
You walk away from it.
And you have to live with it. You have to embody it. And recently I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about Rick Rubin. And they asked him, if you could look back in your career at music you produced, would you change anything? And he said something within the lines of, all my music were like pages of my personal diary. I wrote them at that time, and you never go back in a diary thinking, oh, I should have written that differently. Because that was just the way it was back at that moment in time. And I try to follow that with, you know, the watches we create. And I think and the space we create as well, because we have this human connection. So the space we create around us has to reflect us. The day that we're not in phase with our own universe here as a brand, no clients will be able to enjoy it. They enjoy it because they're in our world. So we have to make it our watches and our brand and our ecosystem we have to keep it and maintain it in our world,
Yeah.
although constantly changing.
Eternity.
Eternity.
My man, I want to say thank you.
Thank you.
This has been amazing.
Thank you.
It's been a real joy to get to know you from our last visit out here
To our next.
We're coming back, of course.
We'll travel to New York next.
Yeah, I like that. But it's amazing to see what you guys are building in real time. I remember speaking with Yoni after we initially met and just speaking how impressed I was in terms of your outlook for this brand and where you see it going, and even your strategy. Though I know it's not the easy road that you've chosen, but when you're trying to achieve great things, you can't take the easy road. And that's just what it is. This has been another episode of Wrist Check Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us. You guys know where to find us. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. And maybe one day you can find us in the shower in Switzerland. I don't know. But we'll see you next week.
Deuces.